I noticed it the moment I stepped out of the cafe, cup of burnt espresso still hot in my hand, steam curling into the crisp morning air. My car was parked exactly where I left it, just across the street, beneath the half-dead tree with brittle leaves that always scratched against the windshield when the wind picked up. But something was wrong. The rear of the vehicle shifted slightly, a subtle dip, as if someone were inside, shifting their weight. For a second, I thought maybe I left the window cracked and a raccoon had found its way in. That would have made more sense than what I saw when I got closer. The back door wasn't completely closed. It hung just enough for the cabin light to flicker uncertainly, like it wasn't sure if it should stay on or give up altogether. I walked faster, heart picking up pace, but not out of fear. It was something else, something more primal, like curiosity laced with electricity. When I reached the car and looked inside, I saw her. A woman, older than me, maybe by more than a decade, with dark curls falling across her face and a wool coat wrapped tightly around her like armor. Her eyes were swollen, not red, not damp, swollen, like she'd been crying for hours and had forgotten what dry cheeks felt like. She was sitting in the center of the back seat, knees together, arms folded, head bowed. I didn't know how she'd gotten in. The car had been locked. I always locked it. But she was there, undeniable, as if she had materialized from the air and memory and sadness. I didn't speak. I didn't ask questions. She didn't look up. Her breathing was shallow, like she was trying to stay small, invisible. And then she said it, just one word. I didn't need to hear it to know what she meant. Her voice was barely audible over the hum of the city around us, but it struck me deeper than most things people shout. I got in, started the engine, and began to drive. There was nowhere specific to go, no address, no direction, just movement. Her silence became part of the road noise, blending with the tires and the occasional squeak of the wipers brushing away a thin film of mist. I adjusted the mirror so I could see her. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were on her lap, hands trembling just slightly. She held the kind of stillness that wasn't calm, but something else, more like the last shiver of a building before it crumbles. There was a smell in the car. Something soft and expensive, perfume maybe, the kind that lingers on cashmere and clings to the neck long after a body has gone cold. Underneath it was something more human, sweat, sorrow. I couldn't tell if she was still crying or if her tears had dried into her skin. Every red light was an opportunity to look at her. I kept glancing up, trying to read her like a story I wasn't allowed to touch. And then I saw it, the dark patch on the seat beneath her, moisture soaking into the fabric, spreading like ink and water. It wasn't from rain or spilled coffee. It was from her. Her grief had a weight, a texture. It marked my car like a stain you can never fully scrub out. Still, I didn't speak. I kept driving, aimlessly through side streets, past houses with Christmas lights still dangling, even though it was late January, past parks where no one walked. I let the hum of the engine be our only conversation, but I felt her presence like heat from a radiator, constant and low, burning slowly into the air between us. She shifted once, slightly, and that movement sent a jolt through me. Not fear, not concern, a different kind of jolt, a recognition. I realized I didn't want her to leave. I didn't even know her name, but I wanted her to stay in that back seat for as long as she needed, as long as she wanted. There was something about the way her body curved inward, like she was trying to fold into herself, disappear into the softness of the seat. But her coat had slipped open just enough for me to see the line of her neck, the slope of her collarbone. Her dress was delicate, the color of dried roses, wrinkled at the waist where her hands clenched the fabric. Her legs were pressed tightly together, but her ankles had shifted, subtly parted, revealing the smallest hint of vulnerability. She wasn't composed. She wasn't hiding. She was unraveling, silently, methodically. The car filled with her. Her breathing, her sadness, her scent. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw more than just a woman on the verge of something. I saw a story without context, a wound without a visible blade. She was more than a passenger. She was a weight pressing on everything inside me, shifting gravity. I could feel the tension between us like static electricity waiting for metal. And then she leaned forward, slowly, carefully, as if waking from a long, strange dream. Her hand reached toward the front seat, fingers extending across the space like a question. She touched my shoulder, just briefly, just enough to leave a memory. Her hand was cold, not icy, just chilled from something deeper than winter. I didn't turn around. I just kept driving. But every nerve ending lit up where her skin met mine. That one touch said everything she hadn't. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't fear. It was need. Quiet, desperate need. We drove like that for a long time. Her hand eventually dropped away, and she retreated into her corner of the car again. But the space between us had changed. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither was she. Something had begun to form, fragile and undefined, like the outline of a shape drawn in steam. I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it would lead somewhere I hadn't expected to go, somewhere I couldn't turn away from now. I didn't care that I didn't know her. I didn't care that she hadn't paid, hadn't ordered the ride. She was in my car, in my space. And the wet patch beneath her, the trembling in her hands, the silent scream caught behind her ribs, I had already taken them in. I had made them mine. We ended up beneath the city. I didn't know how or why I chose the underground parking structure beneath the abandoned mall, but something about the cold concrete and flickering overhead lights felt fitting. The space was mostly empty, except for a few forgotten cars with fogged windows and dusty hoods. The silence was thick, broken only by the distant hum of some old ventilation system that never stopped exhaling. I pulled the car into a far corner, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel like I was afraid to let go. She asked for a cigarette. Her voice was hoarse, like it had been scraped raw on the inside. I didn't smoke, not really, but I kept a crumpled pack in the glove box for reasons I never admitted. I handed her one without looking, and she lit it with steady fingers, drawing in the smoke like it was the first real breath she'd taken in hours. I watched the ember glow faintly in the rearview mirror, illuminating the curve of her lips, the hollow of her cheek. She looked older in that moment, timeless in a way that had nothing to do with age. The car filled with the scent of tobacco and something else, something heavier. Regret, maybe, or hunger, the kind of hunger that had nothing to do with food. I opened my door and stepped out into the cold. The air hit me hard, biting at my skin through my jacket. I leaned against the hood, letting the chill seep into me, hoping it would dull whatever was unraveling inside. But it didn't. I could feel her still, sitting behind the glass, watching, waiting. The sound came sharp and unexpected. The door creaked open, and then her heels struck the concrete. One step, then another. Click, click, click. Each impact echoed through the garage like a countdown. My heart thudded in my chest in rhythm with her approach. I didn't turn to look. I didn't have to. I felt her presence like a change in pressure, like a storm rolling in with no thunder. She stopped beside me. Close, too close. I could hear her breathing, shallow and deliberate. I stared at the empty elevator shaft across the garage, pretending not to notice the way her arm brushed mine, the way the hem of her coat fluttered against my thigh. She stood still for a moment, as if waiting for something. Permission, maybe, or proof that the world wouldn't collapse if she moved. Then she shifted, turning toward me with a slow inevitability that made my breath hitch in my throat. The kiss was sudden, but not surprising. Her lips found mine with a precision that made it feel rehearsed, like we'd done this before in another life, another version of ourselves. Her mouth was cold from the air, but her breath was warm, laced with smoke and sadness. I didn't resist. I couldn't. My hands found her waist, fingers sliding beneath the folds of her coat, palms discovering the shape of her hips, like a memory I'd forgotten I had. She leaned into me, pressing her body against mine, soft curves meeting the hard edge of the car door. Her thigh slipped between mine, and I gasped quietly at the contact, the friction, the heat blooming low in my stomach. She tasted like something I wasn't meant to have, like forbidden fruit rotting beautifully on the branch. I pulled her closer, needing more, needing all of her. Her hands roamed over my back, nails grazing through the fabric, teeth grazing my bottom lip as she deepened the kiss. The parking garage became a blur, just shapes and shadows and echoes. Her coat fell open, and I slid my hands beneath the thin material of her dress, finding the smooth line of her spine, the silk of her thighs. She moaned softly into my mouth, a sound so vulnerable it felt like it had been trapped inside her for years. I lifted her slightly, guiding her back against the concrete column behind us. She didn't resist. She opened to me. Her leg wrapped around my waist, anchoring herself to me. My hand moved higher, cupping her breast through the fabric, feeling the heartbeat beneath, fast and erratic like mine. She arched into the touch, head falling back against the cold stone, eyes fluttering closed. I kissed down her neck, lips grazing her skin as she trembled against me. Her fingers dug into my shoulders, pulling, anchoring, begging, not with words, but with her body. With every breath, she told me not to stop. We moved together, a rhythm formed from desperation and instinct. There was nothing tender in that moment. It was raw, messy, necessary. Her hands under my shirt, my lips at her collarbone, the sound of our bodies meeting in the stillness. She gasped when I slipped a hand beneath her panties, finding her wet, ready, open. My fingers moved slowly at first, testing, exploring. She clung to me, moaning quietly into my neck, her body shuddering with each stroke. The garage echoed with the wet, intimate sounds of her pleasure, and I held her there, suspended between pain and release. She came with a broken sound, her whole body tightening around my hand, her legs shaking against my hip. I kissed her through it, held her up, kept her from falling. And when it passed, when she finally sagged into me like a dying flame, I didn't let go. I cradled her against my chest, feeling the heat of her skin through layers of fabric, feeling the aftershocks tremble through her bones. She exhaled slowly, a sound of surrender. I buried my face in her hair, breathing her in, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But there was no sense to it, only sensation, only the echo of her heels on the concrete and the way her body had melted into mine like we had never been apart. I didn't know what came next. I didn't care. For that moment, she was real. She was mine. And the world outside the parking garage didn't exist. She didn't ask for a destination. She only whispered that she couldn't go back, not home, not anywhere familiar. Her voice was thin, hoarse like smoke, but firm. I understood without needing the full story. I pulled away from the parking garage, headlights slicing the early night, casting shadows on walls that felt too narrow, too bright. The city unfolded around us in broken neon and street lamp flickers, but it all blurred as I drove, letting instinct replace direction. Her body was curled again in the back seat, legs drawn up, cheek resting against the window, her breath leaving faint fog patterns on the glass. I kept checking the mirror. I couldn't stop. Each time I looked, I found her changed in some small way. First, it was her hair, loose and damp against her jaw. Then her fingers, twitching slightly in her lap as if they were dreaming on their own. The buttons of her coat had come undone. Her neckline dipped lower now, revealing the smooth slope of her collarbone, the pale skin flushed from cold or something else entirely. The silence in the car was no longer awkward. It was full, dense, thick with anticipation. We passed familiar intersections, places I'd seen every day, but they no longer felt like mine. I wasn't just a driver anymore. I wasn't taking her anywhere. I was taking us somewhere, a place that didn't have a name or a map, a place that could only exist in the quiet between heartbeats, in the warmth of her breath still lingering in my mouth. When she leaned forward and placed her hand softly on the center console, I reached for it without hesitation. Her skin was warmer now, our fingers locked like puzzle pieces, a perfect, trembling fit. I took her to my place without thinking it through. A small apartment tucked above an empty liquor store, nothing special. Bare walls, secondhand furniture, dim bulbs, but it was mine, and suddenly I needed to share it with her. As we walked in, the hallway felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that demanded movement to survive. She stepped out of her shoes with a softness that felt deliberate. Her coat slid off her shoulders and fell to the floor in a heap of fabric and perfume. She didn't look around the space. She walked straight toward the center of the room, stood there like a question mark, waiting for me to fill in the answer. I closed the door behind us and stood frozen, keys still in my hand, heart rattling like loose change in my chest. She turned slowly, eyes meeting mine with a weight that pressed every breath out of me. In the low light, she looked unreal. Her mascara was smudged, her lips slightly parted, but she glowed. Not in the romanticized way people talk about in movies. She glowed like something untouchable, like the afterimage of a lightning strike. She took a step toward me, then another. I let the keys drop to the floor. She didn't speak. Her hand found the hem of her dress and lifted it over her head in one fluid motion. No hesitation, no dramatics, just skin and shadow and breath. She stood there bare, save for her bra and underwear, dark, delicate lace that framed her body like sin. My mouth went dry. My palms itched. I moved to her like gravity was pulling me. We didn't undress each other the way lovers do in stories. It was less theatrical, more primal. My clothes came off in clumsy movements. I stepped out of my jeans, tore off my shirt. Her hands found my waist, then my spine, tracing me like a route she'd always known but never dared follow. I pushed her gently toward the couch, small, worn, familiar, and she sank onto it like it was made for this moment. I followed her down, straddling her thighs, leaning over her, my breath trembling against her neck. We kissed like we were starving. Her mouth tasted like wine and heat and grief. Her hands tangled in my hair, nails dragging across my scalp, sending shivers through every inch of me. I kissed her jaw, her throat, the hollow beneath her ear. Her bra came off easily, and my hands found her breasts, soft and full, nipples tightening beneath my touch. She arched into me, moaning low in her throat, pressing her hips up against mine with a need that was impossible to ignore. I moved lower, kissing down her chest, her stomach, feeling the way her muscles tightened beneath my lips. I pulled her underwear down slowly, letting my fingers graze along the inside of her thighs. She was already wet. I could feel the heat radiating from her, could smell the salt and sweetness of her arousal. I kissed the inside of her knee, then higher and higher still. When my mouth found her, she gasped and clutched the arm of the couch like it was the only thing holding her to this world. I licked slowly, savoring every taste, every reaction. My hands gripped her thighs, holding her open, grounding her. She cried out, not loud, but raw, vulnerable, like something breaking and mending at the same time. Her body pulsed against my mouth, hips grinding in slow, desperate circles. She was beautiful like this, undone, exposed, powerful in her surrender. When she came, her whole body tensed, then collapsed in waves. I stayed there, lips soft against her, until her breathing slowed. I crawled back up, kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her eyelids. She pulled me into her, wrapping her arms around my back, holding me like a secret. I lay against her, feeling her heart hammer beneath her skin. Our legs tangled, our breath mingled. I didn't know what we were. I didn't care. The world outside my apartment had shrunk to a single point of warmth, to the rhythm of her chest rising and falling beneath mine, to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of wind against the windows. We were nowhere. We were everywhere. We were safe. And in that moment, in that stillness, I realized we had become something unspoken, something sacred. Not lovers, not strangers, just two women with no map, no destination, and no reason to go anywhere else. The morning light crawled in through the blinds, cutting the room into strips of gold and shadow. I stirred slowly, like someone surfacing from deep water, each breath heavier than the last. My muscles ached in that slow, satisfying way, the kind of ache that lingers after being fully claimed. The sheets around me were tangled, damp in places. I shifted and felt the echo of her against my skin before I even opened my eyes. The scent of her was still in the air. Skin, sweat, perfume, something metallic and warm underneath. It clung to my pillow, to my chest, to my fingers. She wasn't in bed. The space beside me was empty, but not cold. Her body had just been there. The indent on the mattress still curved toward me, like her absence was temporary. I sat up slowly, dragging the blanket with me, letting it fall over my lap. My robe lay crumpled near the foot of the bed, but I didn't reach for it. I wanted to feel bare a little longer, wanted to let the morning wrap around me like the memory of her breath on my collarbone. I padded into the hallway quietly, half expecting her to be gone, to find only silence and maybe a note. Instead, I heard soft movement from the kitchen, the familiar clink of mugs, the dull hum of the fridge door closing, the rustle of bare feet on tile. The smell of coffee was faint but unmistakable, curling around the corners of the apartment like a promise. I stepped closer. She stood at the stove wearing my oversized shirt, one I kept for cold nights, frayed at the sleeves, too long on her body. It barely covered the tops of her thighs. Her hair was a mess, wild from sleep and what we had done hours earlier, and it made her look more real than anything I'd ever known. She was pouring milk into a pan, slow and careful, like the act itself meant something. The carton was balanced in one hand, the other resting lazily on her hip. I watched as a drop of white liquid slipped from the rim and landed on her thigh. She didn't wipe it off. My eyes followed the droplet as it ran down her leg, slow and thick, merging with the faint trace of red just beneath it. A smudge of dried blood from the night before, the kind that isn't violent, but intimate, sacred. A mix of friction and surrender. I remembered the exact moment it must have happened. The sharp inhale when I'd gripped her thighs too tight. The way her nails had clawed into my shoulders as if brain hacked. I remembered the heat, the pressure, the gasp that split the silence in two. Now the remnants of that moment streaked her skin like evidence. She turned slightly, catching sight of me, but she didn't startle. She didn't speak. She just met my gaze and held it. The look in her eyes was unreadable. Not fear, not love, not shame. Just something ancient, something rooted. I stepped into the room, barefoot, still naked, the floor cold beneath my feet, but my body buzzing. I took the mug she handed me without a word. Our fingers brushed. Her skin was warm. We stood there together, not touching, but everything between us throbbed with memory. She leaned against the counter and sipped slowly. The milk had turned the coffee cloudy, like fog rolling over dark water. I watched her throat move as she swallowed, the way the light caught the curve of her jaw, the glint of her collarbone under the open neckline of my shirt. I couldn't stop looking at her. Every inch of her felt like a continuation of the night, a line I wanted to keep reading with my eyes, my hands, my mouth. There was a blood stain on the inside of her thigh now, faint, crusted at the edges. It shouldn't have aroused me, but it did. Not in a vulgar way, not in the way people speak about desire in hushed tones and cheap metaphors. This was something else. It was the rawness of her, the way her body bore the marks of us. She didn't try to clean it. She didn't try to hide it. It was just there, exposed, casual, like a secret too big to name. I reached for a napkin from the counter, wet the edge with a splash of milk from my cup, and crouched in front of her. She didn't move. I pressed the damp cloth gently to her skin, wiped away the stain in slow circles, watching her lips part as her breath hitched. I felt her fingers in my hair, tentative at first, then firm, anchoring. I wiped until the red turned pink, until her skin gleamed again, until the milk mixed with the faint iron scent and became something else entirely. When I stood again, she pulled me close, her forehead resting against mine. We breathed together. Her hands slid beneath the blankets still wrapped around my hips, pulling me in until our bodies met again, chest to skin. I tasted milk on her lips. She tasted like something undone. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Words had no place here. Later, as the light climbed higher and the morning began to shape itself into hours, we sat on the floor, legs tangled, backs resting against the cabinets. We drank what was left of the coffee, shared a piece of bruised fruit, and let silence hold us. I traced the outline of a tiny cut on her shoulder with my fingertip. She leaned into the touch like a cat in sunlight. Every mark on her felt like a story I had written in the dark, in gasps, in teeth, in fingers pressed too hard. Milk and blood, softness and sting. Her body and mine layered now in ways that couldn't be peeled apart. We didn't ask what came next. We didn't plan. We just let the morning become part of us. And in the sticky stillness of the kitchen, I knew she wasn't temporary. I didn't know if she would stay, but I knew she had already taken root in the softest, bloodiest parts of me. It started with stillness, an eerie, unnatural kind, the kind of silence that settles on a place after something sacred has happened, or something terrible. I remember waking up alone. The sheets beside me were cold, no indentation, no trace of her warmth. For a moment, I thought I had dreamt her, that the past few days had been stitched together from longing and fever. I sat up slowly, listening for the soft sounds I'd come to expect, footsteps, humming, the clink of mugs in the kitchen, but there was nothing, only the ticking of the wall clock and the low hum of the refrigerator, mechanical and indifferent. I walked barefoot through the apartment. Her coat was gone, her shoes, the shirt she'd worn the day before. Her perfume no longer hung in the air. Even the damp towel she'd left on the floor of the bathroom was missing. It was as if she had vanished with surgical precision, erasing herself from every corner of my space. My chest tightened in a slow, measured way, not like panic, like inevitability. I sat on the couch, the same place we had first touched, where her body had melted into mine like wax under flame. Now it felt hollow. The cushion still held the shape of her thigh, faint but undeniable. I ran my fingers over the fabric, tracing the outline, remembering how her breath had caught, how her hands had searched for mine in the dark. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. I just sat there, trying to make sense of the silence. My phone was on the table. I hadn't checked it in hours, maybe longer. I reached for it out of habit more than hope. The screen lit up. 2 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. No message. I stared at the digits, something about them familiar but wrong, like a name half remembered from a dream. I hesitated before calling back. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't know what I was expecting. Her voice, maybe? Some kind of explanation, or just the sound of her breathing on the other end. The phone rang twice before it answered. There was no hello, just a sound, soft, rhythmic, like someone inhaling through their teeth. Then a woman's voice, low, measured, almost amused. Not hers, but close. It sent a chill at my spine. She said my name, slowly, as if tasting it. I didn't respond. My lips parted, but nothing came out. The voice continued, telling me not to worry, telling me that she was fine, that she had done this before, that I shouldn't take it personally, that I wasn't the first, that she was a collector of women, of moments, of soft flesh and open mouths, and bedrooms soaked in trust. I didn't understand at first. I thought it was a prank, a mistake. But then the voice told me what I looked like when I slept, the way my left leg curled up, the way my mouth stayed open, the mole beneath my rib cage. She described the sound I made when I came, not a moan, not a scream, a kind of broken sigh, a flutter, like a bird dying in the throat. I felt my stomach twist, my skin turn to glass. The room grew smaller around me. She said there were others, that I would meet them eventually, not in person, but in footage, in recordings, that she liked to watch them again, like home videos. She said I had been beautiful, that I had bled for her, that I had let her inside, all the way in, that the bruise on my inner thigh would last for days, and every time I saw it, I would remember what it meant to be wanted and consumed. The call ended without a goodbye, just silence. My phone screen went black. I sat there, frozen, a buzzing under my skin that wouldn't stop. I stood up too quickly and stumbled, the room swaying around me like a ship lost at sea. I ran to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were sunken. My mouth was cracked. My neck still bore the faint trace of her mouth, a shadow of a kiss. I lifted my shirt and stared at my body. Red marks, bruises, scratches, proof. I thought of her fingers on my skin, the way she had whispered into my ear without saying a word. I thought of how carefully she had watched me, how precisely she had disappeared. My breath hitched. I reached for my toothbrush, my towel, my robe, anything that might feel real. But nothing did. Everything was tainted with her. She was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost in my throat, a stain on my sheets. Later, I found something tucked between the pages of a book she had pretended to read, a photo, printed on thick, glossy paper. Not of me, but of someone else. A woman, maybe 30, lying in bed, half naked, eyes closed, peaceful, oblivious. On the back, a date was written in pen. The year was 3 years ago. My stomach dropped. I turned the page and found another photo, and another, all different women, all the same angle, all sleeping, all taken from the same place where I had left my phone charging overnight. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed on the couch, lights on, staring at the front door. I expected her to return. Part of me still wanted her to. I told myself I would scream if I saw her, that I would fight, that I would call the police, burn every sheet, scrub every surface. But I knew I wouldn't. I knew that if I saw her face again, I would open the door. I would let her back in, and I hated myself for that. There was no destination anymore, no name, no closure, only the call, only the voice, only the echo of her breath in my mouth and the image of her legs, bruised and beautiful, disappearing down a hallway I couldn't follow. It's been weeks, maybe longer. Time doesn't move the same way now. It folds in on itself, creasing at strange angles, looping and spiraling like smoke from a cigarette left too close to the edge. I drive at night mostly. The silence feels softer then, less demanding. The streets are quieter, the lights more forgiving. I take fares I don't care about, drunk couples who laugh too loud, business people too absorbed in their phones to notice anything real. But every once in a while, someone gets in who trembles when they speak, someone with smeared mascara and a bruised voice. And I wonder. The mirror has become my companion. I watch them in it, study them, how they sit, how they hold themselves, how close they let their knees drift. I watch for that flicker, that barely perceptible flash of something broken, something tender, something that might be waiting for permission to unravel. I never ask. I only drive. But I know the signs now. I recognize the silence that isn't just tired, but hollowed out, the kind that begs for someone to reach in and touch what's left. I keep the photos in a box beneath the floorboard, tucked away under a panel I pried up with a screwdriver the night after I found the first one. The box is plain, unmarked, but heavy in the way only truth can be. Inside, each picture is sealed in a plastic sleeve, glossy, carefully labeled with dates and names I had to coax from old voicemails and silent phone calls. Some have notes, descriptions, details of how we met, how long she stayed, what she smelled like, what she tasted like when she finally opened her mouth to me. There are 8 now. I was the 9th. I know that. I accepted it the way someone accepts a terminal diagnosis, quietly, without flinching. I wasn't special. I wasn't the one who changed her. I was just next. She studied me like all the others, memorized my skin, learned the rhythm of my breathing, waited until I was pliable and full of trust, and then slipped away with a piece of me I'll never get back. She didn't just leave me empty, she left me open, and something crawled in. I find myself doing the same things she did. Not deliberately, not at first. It started with little things, letting someone stay just a little longer in my car, offering them a bottle of water, driving in silence when I could tell they didn't want noise. Then came the touches, the shoulder, the wrist, the light brush of fingers when handing over change. They never pulled away. They never said no. And now I don't wait for permission. I bring them to my place, one by one. I never lie. I never force. I just make it easy. I leave the door unlocked. A shower, a drink, a couch. They choose me, just like I once chose her without realizing it. And when the moment comes, when their mouths tremble and their eyes shine with whatever need they've been burying, I give them exactly what they think they want. They never know I'm collecting. It's not about control. not about power. It's about preservation. Every woman I bring home, I capture in her most vulnerable state, not with cruelty, with reverence. I photograph them the way a museum might photograph stolen art before locking it away, carefully, lovingly. I wait until they're asleep, until the tremors have stilled and the heat has faded, and then I document angles, lighting, the exact placement of their limbs. I press shutter after shutter until I know I've caught the truth of them, the version no one else will ever see. Sometimes they wake up while I'm still watching. Sometimes they don't. I never keep them long. They always leave. It's part of the cycle. I don't stop them. I don't ask for more. Once they walk out, I file the memory away and seal it in plastic. Another addition to the archive, another echo, another proof that I'm not alone in this strange, hollow worship. The part I never say out loud, the part I barely allow myself to think, is that I'm still waiting for her to come back. Not the others, not the copies, her, the original, the woman who started this spiral in my veins. I want to ask her what she sees when she looks through her camera. I want to know if she's still watching me, if she's proud. Some nights I sit in the dark, flipping through the photos like a priest counting beads. I study the curve of a hip, the flutter of an eyelash, the smear of lipstick across a collarbone. I remember their warmth, their sobs, their breathless laughter when I made them forget where they were. I remember how small they looked once sleep took them, how childlike and defenseless. And I wonder what I must have looked like to her. I don't feel guilt, not anymore. I feel devotion. Each image is a prayer, each body a hymn, each woman a testament to the sacred space between fear and surrender. I don't need names. I don't need love. I need the moment just before they realize they've given me too much. In the morning, I go back to the car. I wipe down the seats. I fold the blanket she used. I adjust the mirror. I wait. Because someone always comes. And when she does, I'll be ready. I've learned from the best.